Hi guys, my name is Maria and welcome to another video. Hey guys, so for today, I thought that I would discuss the pros and cons of buying a bird from a pet store as opposed to buying a bird from a breeder or from a store that only exclusively sells birds. I have gone through both processes and I think that it's a good idea to discuss the pluses and minuses of each, and then at the end I will give you my personal recommendation of what I think is the best way and the safest and just the most enjoyable way of purchasing a bird. Also, I'd like to say that I am talking about purchasing baby birds. I am not talking about rescuing adult birds. I'm only talking about baby birds. So this video is going to be comparing the pluses and minuses of buying baby birds from a pet store versus a breeder or an exclusively bird store that only sells birds. And when I say pet store, I mean any animal store that sells animals besides just birds. So any store that sells more than birds is the pet store that I am referring to. So let's compare and contrast. We're going to start with the pet store. So any store that sells more than just birds. We have some nearby over here, and I have bought multiple birds from pet stores. I think, yeah, one of the birds that we have purchased from a pet store was Finn and Arya, Sunny, and that's about it. Those are the three birds that we have purchased from pet stores. So let's start with the pluses of purchasing a baby bird from a pet store. Okay, the first plus I have is that it is definitely, or it's possibly harder to get scammed if you're purchasing a baby bird from a pet store, because you're going in and you're seeing that baby bird in person, as opposed to when you go to through a breeder. Usually, you're gonna go through Facebook or online some other way. You are not able to see that baby bird first before purchasing it, usually. I mean, breeders will sometimes offer to FaceTime, or they will send a lot of videos and pictures, which good breeders have no problem doing. But in general, when you're purchasing a baby bird from a pet store, it is definitely better because you are seeing that bird before you are giving your money and actually purchasing it. Also, this might be the case, but not always, definitely. Sometimes when you're purchasing a bird from a pet store, sometimes that bird is going to be cheaper than, let's say, if you're purchasing a bird through a breeder. This is not always the case, but if a breeder is a quality breeder and they take big pride in what they do and they love what they do, and they want the best for the babies that they're selling, sometimes they will up the price just to make sure that they have only serious inquiries and people who really just want a lifetime companion, and they want the best possible and the best that is out there. Also, when going through a pet store, a lot of times most or all supplies for that baby bird will already be there. Of course, this is not always the case. But, in general, when you're purchasing through a pet store, a lot of times you will find bird toys and, maybe even a cage. Although these days, cages that are sold primarily at pet stores usually are on the small side, even for little birds like parakeets and finches. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. All of the cages that we have purchased, minus Arya's cage, we have purchased through Amazon or another online cage store, just because they tend to be better quality, bigger, and just have more choices in general. Although pet stores might also have some bird toys, food, stuff like that, treats. Although for the most part, you could probably get better quality ones online. But it's still nice to just have that possibility to just buy all that stuff right off the bat, and then maybe, purchase a few more things here and there once you already bring the bird home. So that is a plus, or a possible plus, of a pet store. Also, to go along with the fact that you can see the bird before purchasing it and putting money down for it, also, you could most of the time hold the bird and handle it and see how it is before purchasing it. So that is the last plus that I have on my list when purchasing a baby bird through a pet store. And now let's talk about the negatives, or the minuses, that comes with purchasing a bird through a pet store. The first minus that I have is that the birds that you are getting might not be as healthy, because a lot of times pet store owners cut corners and they don't want to test and spend all that money for all those birds to make sure that they're checked for any kind of health diseases or anything like that. So that's definitely a negative, because I feel like for the most part, pet stores want to sell as much as possible and make as much as possible in profit, which is why they don't tend to have as good quality birds as breeders do. And going along with that, a lot of times, at least in my experience, the birds that you get from pet stores have not been sexed. Sexed means they have not sent in their DNA, their blood sample, in order to determine if the bird is a male or a female. In my experience, that's the case. When we bought Sunny, Arya, Finny, we are not 100% sure if all those birds are boys or girls. Of course, we have our suspicions, and we have done some research as to how there are other ways to determine what sex a bird might be. But we are not going to know 100% sure until either the Indian ringnecks get their rings, the boys, or one of the birds lays an egg. That is the only way we're going to know. Of course, it's possible to sex a bird on your own by sending in a blood sample, but it gets harder the older that the birds get, because you have to make a pretty significant cut in order to get a good amount of blood sample to send in. So that might not be the best route, because the bird might hate you or hold a grudge against you for God knows how long. Because let's be honest, birds are known to hold grudges. Another negative about purchasing a baby bird from a pet store is that they might not be weaned off of their formula. This has actually been a personal experience for me. I purchased my cockatoo, my Sichuan cockatoo, from an animal store, pet store. And when I purchased it, the pet store owner told me that the baby was not weaned off of formula yet. So I had to learn how to feed the baby formula. Of course, he showed it to me, and, he wanted to make sure that I got it. But that is definitely a dangerous route to take, since when you're formula feeding a baby, and if it's your first time and you don't have experience, a lot of things could go wrong. You have to make sure the consistency is right. You have to make sure that there's enough vitamins in it. You have to make sure that you're not feeding it to them too fast. There are a lot of nuances that come with bottle feeding baby birds. And that is definitely something not to take lightly. And pet store owners should not just be selling baby birds that haven't been weaned left and right. Although in my case, it worked out. and I did a lot of research and a lot of work to make sure that I was doing it right, it could still be potentially dangerous if that baby is sold to the wrong person, or the person who is not going to take the time to make sure that they're doing it right. Another negative of purchasing through a pet store is that they might not carry as many choices of toys, cages, and stuff like that, or not as high quality choices, because since they sell such a vast amount of different kinds of animals, they might not have the biggest selection for specific animals like birds. Of course, that might or might not be true, since all pet stores are different, and you know, there's different experiences in each, but that is a possible negative. And the last negative on my list of buying a baby bird from a pet store is that that bird is more likely to be less tamed, since they have not been handled as much. Because considering the fact that pet stores carry a lot of different animals, or more different animals than just a bird, they probably do not have as much time to play with those birds and handle those birds to make sure that those birds are really tame and sweet and handleable when somebody comes to purchase them. They definitely do not have as much time on their hands to devote to each and every animal in the store. So that is definitely a very big possibility. And now we are going to switch over to purchasing a baby bird from a breeder or from a pet store that exclusively sells birds. So like a bird store, like the one that we have in Batavia, 30 minutes away. They only garner 2 birds and bird supplies and everything to do with birds. So let's start with the positives when going through a breeder or a bird store. So the first positive is that when you're purchasing a bird through them, it's more likely that that bird will be hand tamed and just better overall in quality, more social, since it's been more socialized, especially if you're going through a smaller breeder that doesn't have as many birds to take care of, or if you're going through, like, let's say a family-owned bird store like the one that we have over here called Bird is the Word. And in addition to that, if you're going through a breeder, more likely they care more about the well-being of their birds, because they know that their reputation is at stake, and they get a lot of their customers through word of mouth. So after I purchased Sam, for example, I then went and I recommended that bird breeder to others who were looking for a bird, and asked me for recommendations, because if I had a good experience, I am definitely more likely to recommend that breeder to somebody else. Or also, breeders definitely care more about their birds, because let's say they don't have the specific bird that you want, they then will redirect you to a different breeder that might carry that bird. So the breeder that they recommend you to needs to have a good reputation as well. Otherwise, the first breeder would not have recommended them, because they definitely care about the satisfaction of their customers. And to add to that, those birds that you purchase through breeders are more likely to be tested for all of the different genetic diseases or anything to do with their health. They are usually sexed, in my opinion, in my experience. All of the birds that I have purchased through a breeder, which are Cora, Sam, Finn, no, not Finn. No, not Finn. Finn was through a pet store. Bailey, Mila, yes, and that is it. Oh, and Cass. So those birds that I purchased through a bird store or breeder have been sexed, and I knew exactly if they were a boy or girl. I did not have to guess. I did not have to try to determine that in some other way. Also, all the birds that you get from breeders or bird stores come with certificates. They come with a guarantee, and it is just more likely that you can trust those guarantees as opposed to a guarantee or a health certificate from a pet store that you cannot be sure that they have actually gone through that process and paid that money to make sure that you are getting the healthiest bird possible. And moving on, also, if you're getting a bird from a breeder, it is more likely that you can keep in contact with that same breeder after you have purchased your baby and brought it home. I have exchanged numbers with all of the breeders that I have purchased birds from, and I actually sometimes still get in contact with them. I'll ask them questions, or I will send them pictures or videos of the birds that they have sold, and they definitely really enjoy seeing their babies grow up and just seeing how happy and, you know, what a great life that they're living, because they just care. They care a lot about the birds that they are selling. And going along with that, breeders are usually not just in it for the profit, at least the breeders that I have gone through. And there have been breeders that have been known to turn people away. They're not scared to do that because, you know, they want to get the best possible owners and the best homes for their babies. They're not just going to sell a bird to just anyone. So that is definitely a plus. And also, as I said before, the communication lines between breeder and the new owner of the baby bird is open. So you can always ask questions, go back and just anything. You know, you can contact them with anything in regards to the baby bird that you purchased from them. And even you can even ask them questions that don't have to do with that bird. I have asked breeders previously about a lot of different things in regards to all my birds, not just the birds that I have, you know, purchased specifically from them. And now let's move on to the minuses when buying a bird from a breeder. So the first thing is usually you are not going to see that bird in person before you bring it home. Of course, as I said before, it is possible to FaceTime sometimes, and you can get videos and pictures, which I have, but especially if that breeder lives a long way from you, it is not always possible to go and visit that bird, see that bird, handle that bird before you actually purchase that bird and bring it home. Actually, there have been a lot of scams online, bird scams, all different kind of animal scams. That is actually a topic that can be a whole video all on its own. And, you know, maybe one day I will do that video. But for me, this is how I know if it's a scam. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. It's probably a scam. That is how I go and know if something is a scam or not. Another negative when buying from a breeder is that you will probably need to purchase a lot of stuff separately. I mean, before you bring that bird home, usually you need to purchase a cage, toys, bedding, food, and all that kind of stuff. So, for example, for us, we were definitely waiting on a lot of packages, a lot of them from Amazon before we bought our babies home from the breeders. But I actually don't mind that because I think that stuff is a lot better quality than most pet stores have. And in addition, the prices of those baby birds might be higher since, you know, the breeders want to make sure that their babies are going to good homes and to people who actually will care and love them since, you know, they're willing to pay more money for them. Of course, this is not always the case, but it is sometimes, and it has been in my experience, well, most of the time in my experience, not all the time, but that's definitely something that could be the case. And the last point that I want to make here is that if you're purchasing a bird from a breeder or from an exclusively bird store, a lot of times more travel is required. Either you will have to meet that breeder somewhere at a certain point to, you know, pick that bird up, pay for it and stuff like that, or you will have to travel all the way to the breeder's house. I have met up with a breeder. That's what I've usually done because the good breeders will most of the time be able to work with you to make sure that you're not traveling too far. Although for a quality baby bird with, guaranteed health and, to live a long and happy life, it's worth it to travel longer distances to get a higher quality bird. And that is, guys, my pluses and my minuses about buying baby birds at breeders as opposed to pet stores. Please let me know in the comments if I forgot anything or if there's another good one that you want to mention. That I would be very grateful. And so, of course, when it comes down to it, I think the choice is obvious. I prefer, personally, to go through breeders. I have had better experience with breeders. I have been happier with my babies buying them from breeders as opposed to just generic pet stores. And, there's a lot of pluses that I've mentioned, like temperament, communication, and stuff like that. So definitely, if somebody were to ask me who to go through, a pet store or a breeder, I would definitely say go through a breeder. Of course, a good breeder with a good reputation who is highly recommended. I have some recommendations of breeders that I have personally gone through, and I will list it in the description below. I will list the pages of those breeders on Facebook, because that's where I have communicated with most of them. And please, if you are waiting or, if you are in the process of buying a baby bird, don't hurry. Don't rush. Look around, see what's out there, and make the best decision for you. Do your research. Look around and don't just settle for the first bird that you see. So that is going to do it for us today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And again, I am so grateful for the ongoing support that I have gotten from my channel and from all of you guys. I am so grateful. You guys have no idea. And I'm definitely feeling like I'm getting more comfortable in front of the camera. So that's good. So I will keep making these videos for you guys, and I hope you enjoy them. And I want to also know if you've had any experiences with purchasing birds. If it was a negative experience, positive experience, anything, please write it in the comments below. I would love to hear about them. And I hope you guys come and see me in my next video. I put out videos every Tuesday and Friday. So see you guys soon. Bye.